What's up, guys? Science and application. Uh, just because there's always seems to be like a debate, like, oh, I read this research article, or this worked for me in real life. So I figured I'd talk a little bit about science and then applying the science to the person, whether that's rehab or performance, right? So science happens in a lab, or usually it does. And that kind of allows you to study your desired method. And science is where you can go and read a research article, and then you can break it down. Like, was this a good methodology that was used? Does it make sense? Was it statistically different? Stuff like that, right? And something can look amazing. It can be, this had 99.9% effectiveness. But again, that's in a lab, right? And the issue is when we try to apply that outside or into a real life scenario, we're no longer in a lab. So just because something worked perfectly in the lab experiment and in the research article, doesn't mean it's going to work for every single person, because people are extremely complex beings, right? You know, outside of the lab, you have, they got a job, they have time restrictions with work commutes and trying to make food, they might have dietary restrictions, they might have predisposed conditions, they might have just their predisposed perceptions to things, and that affects how they recover. Stress, it's all very, very different. So when someone says they're evidence-based or stuff like that, it sounds cool, and I'm not bagging on anybody that says that they're evidence-based, but the idea is you have to be able to take the evidence and apply it to real life, right? So what up, Justin? Journey to Greatness, what's going on? But that's where my issue lies, is why I get kind of cautious when I see, like, you know, oh, this worked for me because I did this, or oh, but this research article said this, and that's awesome, and we need to break that down farther. Like, did it make sense, right? Well, you know, is it what was really the gold nugget from that research article or stuff like that? That's why I always talk about principles over methods, because the method used in that research article is awesome, but not everybody can do that method and apply it to their life. You know, something that's a 4-day split, and they did this awesome experiment, and, you know, everybody gained like 100 pounds on every lift, and they were all, you know, intermediate lifters, and they all had this, you know, experience and stuff like that. Just because it worked for those guys, not everybody can get in 4 days of lifting a week. They can't all put in an hour and a half of training 4 days a week. Maybe they need to do 45 minutes. Maybe they can only do 3 days a week. Maybe they can't handle that much volume in 3 days, so then they got to split it up into 5. Life happens, holidays, somebody gets sick, you got to go to the doctor. Those are all very broad and general stuff, but the idea is that we use science to find principles and other means as like ideas, right? It kind of opens up a toolbox a little bit. Prescription strength buddy, what's going on? What up, Bob? And that's where the art of all this comes in. And this idea is kind of taken from Stronger by Science, but it's like there's a science to it, and then there's an art to it. And the idea is the art uses the science and applies it to the person, because that is the hardest part, is trying to relay everything into the real world. And that's where evidence-based stuff falls. You could read every article in the world, but if you have no idea how to apply it to Bob out in the real world, because, you know, his life is drastically different, or could be drastically different from mine, and Joe down the road, and so on and so forth, that's where things kind of fall through, and that's where science kind of doesn't hold up as well as it should. And even with nutrition, fitness, performance, and rehab, all that stuff is very, very messy, and it's not definitive in terms of, you know, you're still dealing with humans and human error and complexity of just being a living, breathing being. It's not a machine, right? So I just thought that needed to be said, because you know, I might cite a research article, and that's awesome, but if I can't bring that to the forefront and apply it to a person so they can use that information, that science is negligible, then it doesn't matter. So being educated and science-based is awesome, but you also have to know how to correlate it and modify it and use the main principles to push into programming and coaching and things like that. So just stuff to keep in mind next time you see research-based or evidence-based, and the same goes elsewhere. If somebody doesn't use research and evidence-based practices and they just go on what worked for them and their experience, you got to be cautious on that as well. If you think about it, research is just a refined version of other people's experiences, and it's all just jammed into the internet versus just someone just like, well, it worked for me in the past. Well, this is other people's experiences put into a system that we can understand and read and share with everybody instead of just your personal experience. So be cautious on those extremes, and a lot of times for most stuff the answer lies in the middle, right? So that's my live for the day, guys.